Hello and welcome to episode 16 of the Millennium Pod, a Star Wars podcast by me, Ari, at ari.in.space on TikTok and at millenniumpod_ on Twitter and Instagram. I gotta be honest with y'all, it feels really good to say that. Normally I hate doing that intro, especially when I have guests, but because it's been a few weeks since my last episode, it just feels natural and nice, and I'm happy to be recording once again. This week, I'm excited that it's going to be the first episode of my Rebels rewatch series. So today we're going to be breaking down and just kind of talking about episodes 1 through 5 of season 1 of Rebels. So consider this your spoiler warning. If you haven't seen it and you want to be watching it, go watch it, come back later. But before I get into it, a little bit of a backstory, I guess, on why A, I wanted to do this series, and B, why I'm so excited about it. And it's pretty much just, well, as I said in my social media posts about it, I think Rebels is a really cool show. It shows us a bit about an era in Star Wars, that we don't know a lot about. We get Empire stuff in the original trilogy, but not really, and that's about it. Up until, the Bad Batch coming out, really, if you weren't going to read the books, this is our only kind of visual media opportunity to kind of get into what life was like in the Empire. And I think that's really cool. If you've listened to some of my previous episodes, you've probably heard me say, Empire era is my favorite. And it is, although currently it's being rivaled by the High Republic. I just read the most recent High Republic novel, and we're getting another a young adult novel at the end of the month here. I'm super excited about that. But anyway, in general, I would say still the Empire era is my favorite. And that's probably the main reason why I like Rebels so much. Aside from all the great themes of found family, and I'm a sucker for that. But this rewatch is really, the reason I'm doing it is mainly because when I first watched Rebels, which was I kind of started in December of this past year, then kind of watched a few, took a break, and then really just kind of watched a bunch of episodes, finished it, and I say finished, in air quotes, because I skipped a lot of episodes, mainly because, being on Star Wars internet, I kind of wanted to know what everyone was talking about. And so I kind of just, one of my good friends who's actually been on the podcast, and should be coming on again soon, my good friend Sydney gave me a list of, I want to say maybe 30 to 40, no, probably not quite 40, probably about 30 episodes that she was like, these are really the essential main plot points. You should watch them all, but if you're just trying to get the main plot points. So that's how I say I watched it. So really, I did skip quite a bit. And even the ones I did watch, I honestly don't really remember, because I was just trying to power through it just so I could understand, what people were talking about. Because a lot of people in the fandom seem to really like it, and for good reason, in my opinion. And so now I want to go back and rewatch it, watch every episode this time, and actually, take the time to be watching it and to think about it, because as I've said about 4 times already, I think it's a really great show, and I think it's a really great resource for hardcore fans to kind of understand, Empire era. So with all that being said, I guess let's just get into this first episode. These are going to be bi-weekly for the foreseeable future. And I will be posting which episodes I'm going to be reviewing / talking about, whatever, a few days before each episode drops, just so that if anybody does want to, have it fresh in their mind if they're going to listen, well, then you can check out my social media for that. All that being said, today's episode is, of course, on the first 5 episodes of season 1. For no particular reason did I decide to do all 5 of these together. I'm kind of thinking, for the most part, I'll do 4 or 5 episodes. Probably in the later seasons, I might do a few less episodes each podcast episode, just because some of them have more distinct arcs. But anyway, I want to be able to just talk about as many as possible as we go, because I'm just excited, and I don't want to only watch 1 or 2 every 2 weeks. So that's why I'm doing a big chunk here. So yeah, episodes 1 through 5. Also, as one more quick side note before I actually get started, I am going to be talking about these episodes as I go through as if it's the first time I'm watching them. And what I mean by that is I'm not going to be like, oh, well, I know what happens, so this didn't mean anything, or it did. Like, it's gonna be sort of, oh, I see what we're getting at here. Because honestly, aside from the really, like, 4 or 5 really big events, I don't actually remember what happened. So it is, for a lot of it, like the first time. So that's kind of the vibe we're gonna be going with here. So getting into it. Episodes 1 and 2, I think, are really, really strong intro, really strong start. It kind of sets us up for what we're going to be expecting in future episodes. And what I mean by that is just, like, in general. So, like, it's showing us, we're going to have this crew, and they're going to be doing little, like, heist type things to kind of screw up the Empire. It's basically the premise of the show, and that's really shown in episodes 1 and 2. And I think it's really strong. I've actually watched these episodes several times just because I just think they're really good. And I appreciate that right away we're getting to see what life is like, on Lothal, on the planets like Lothal. I mean, we can assume, we only see Lothal, but assuming, and just like what life is like in the Empire era. And we know from other media, like, the Empire had a very strong hold on Lothal more than some other planets, but we can also assume that on other planets where the Empire did have a stronghold, it would be similar. And so I think that's interesting. Like, right off the bat, we see, Imperial troops harassing people, and you can just tell that the vibes, everything's kind of gray and not really thriving, which I really like. Like I said, like, I just think it's so interesting to see, actually what life was like, because I think we forget often that Empire era was quite a while. Like, it was about 20, 25 years or so, which is quite a long time. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the original trilogy. It is my favorite trilogy, but we really don't get at all the sense of the Empire, It's way more, Vader's the bad guy, and that's it. But we don't really get to see, how horrible life was, and the difficulties people had to face in that time. And I think something that really highlights the ruthlessness, I guess, of the Empire, right away in these first 2 episodes, is the fact that they're trying to intercept a transport carrying Wookiees who are going to become slaves, right? So already any regime that's dealing with slaves is pretty freaking bad. And then especially, when they talk about how the Wookiees are going to be going to Kessel, and I believe it's Hera says, well, most people don't survive there anyway, but for Wookiees, it's going to be an immediate death sentence because, they're born in a nice, cool forest. That's what they're used to. They have all that fur, and Kessel is, if you've seen Solo, terrible. And so just like the utter lack of any regard for anything that the Empire has, in basically being like, oh, well, these Wookiees are probably going to die, but it's fine. We'll just get a new batch when they die, essentially. It just really emphasizes how actually horrible it was. I think they do a really good job of showing the audience, before we're kind of explicitly shown / told, that A, Kanan is a surviving Jedi, and B, Ezra is strong in the Force. It's not kind of said right off the bat, but we're given little clues, which I think is quite interesting. I mean, Ezra has some epic jumps, absolutely epic jumps that, I mean, if you've seen any other Star Wars, you automatically know, okay, well, he's using the Force, because there's no way a human can jump like that. And then he finds, the holocron and the lightsaber, and as a side note, of course, we had to slightly revisit Order 66 in a Dave Filoni production. Like, of course. The man loves Order 66 and rehashing it in a million ways. But I did think it was a nice touch, having Kenobi on the holocron. And, yeah. And I mean, even if they didn't show Ezra, having some strength with the Force, we do see some very strong Jedi tendencies in him. Namely, trying to help people no matter what the cost is to him. And that's very Jedi, especially, when he, in episode 2, when he goes to save the Wookiee child, baby Wookiee, I don't know how old it is, but the young Wookiee, without even really really thinking, you can tell he's like, oh, why do I want to help? But does it anyway. And it's very Jedi, going against what seems logical in order to help people. So it's no surprise that he ends up, deciding to train as a Jedi with Kanan. And I also appreciate in the first 2 episodes, we really get a sense of all of the characters in the Ghost Crew, which I think is really, really cool. Like already 2 episodes, basically 40 minutes in, you can kind of tell who's who in the crew and what role each person plays. I mean, Hera is obviously the mom. She has incredible mom vibes. One of my favorite parts in a lot of the episodes that I've seen is when Zeb leaves Ezra behind on the Imperial ship, and she just uses his full name in the most mom tone I've ever heard just to scold him. It's incredible. We get to continue to see, Ezra's Jedi, what I'm going to call Jedi instincts, and B, his strength with the Force as we move into episodes 3 and 4. Specifically, like, Force strength, when he just full sends Gallus into, well, I don't even know what they're called, but one of those rock things on Lothal, when he's about to probably kill Zeb. No thoughts, just let me shove this guy with my mind very aggressively. And then in terms of further Jedi instincts, I would say in episode 4, when Ezra and Zeb are in their stolen TIE fighter, and then they realize that some of the farmers on Lothal need help, like, without even hesitating, Ezra's like, nope, we're going to help them. Which is just, it's really, I like to see that, those Jedi instincts that I'm calling them, that, are just kind of manifesting themselves in people who are strong with the Force, but who haven't been trained from a young age that that's what they should do. I think that's really interesting because, a lot of Jedi have these instincts, but sometimes I wonder, like, is it because that's who they are as a person, or is it because they were strong with the Force and they've been trained that that's what they're supposed to do from a young age? And it's interesting to think about, but obviously with Ezra, like, he naturally has that instinct to want to help people, which is very much what the Jedi Order would have taught. And so I just think it's interesting to think about that. In episode 3 of season 1 of Rebels, we get 2 more things that I think are important. The first being further on how ruthless the Empire is. And we learn that through the second thing, which is more of Zeb's history and his tragic past and how a lot of his people were wiped out by the Empire. We don't get a lot, but we do kind of get to understand a bit more why he's in this fight specifically. It's very personal for Zeb, and I think it's nice that we get to learn that right off the bat, 3 episodes in. And again, we're just seeing more and more how terrible the Empire is. This show does a lot for world building, and I really love it. Yeah, it does have a good plot, 100%. I don't even need the plot because I just think the world building is great, and I get so absorbed into it. A bonus third thing that we get in episode 3 that's very exciting to me is a Bail Organa cameo. I don't know if I've said this on this podcast or just to friends, but I think Bail is, like, probably in my top, like, he might be my favorite character that I have absolutely no desire to see a show or a book just about him, but love seeing him pop up in different places character, if that makes sense. Like, he's not my favorite character, but I get very excited when I see him in things because I think he's a very, very, very cool character. And so, obviously, any episode that Bail is in, I'm going to love and appreciate. Now, I'm not sure how important episode 4 is to the plot as a whole. If I'm remembering correctly, I don't think it's too important. However, I think it's important in the sense that it really shows us the dynamic of the entire Ghost Crew. Like, Kanan and Hera are very much the parents, 100%. And then Zeb, Sabine, Ezra, and Chopper are the children. Are 100% the children. and it's hilarious. I love the dynamic. I think it's so funny. I think it's so funny seeing Kanan and Hera just exasperated with their quote unquote kids. Now, episode 5, I really like for a lot of reasons. A big one is it's all about kind of like that student-teacher relationship and the struggles of that. And I'm assuming most people don't know, but I'm actually in school to be a teacher. So therefore, that resonates a lot with me because although, I haven't taught an entire class myself, I've done tutoring and stuff, I've taken some classes. I'm going to be really starting that this fall, which is pretty exciting. But something I think about a lot is just ways like, okay, well, how am I going to be a good teacher? Because growing up, I had really great teachers, excellent teachers, and I had really bad ones who were just completely unable to connect and teach. And so it's definitely something I've thought about a lot, especially, throughout university, because in general, I would say university profs are a lot worse at teaching than actual teachers who have gone to school to teach, which, does make sense. And so recently I have been thinking a lot, okay, well, how can these really smart people be so bad at teaching, right? And so that's something I obviously would want to avoid. And so I really like this episode because it's really focusing on that. And how one can be the best teacher, how one can be the best student, how the student can teach the teacher, and all of that. And I really like that, Kanan is trying to basically pass Ezra off to Luminara, but it's not for the reason that Ezra thinks. It's not for the reason that we as the audience might think. It's really because he feels like he's failing, which kind of reminds me of this part, well, not really this part, kind of the whole premise of the book Master and Apprentice, which focuses on Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan about 8 years before the Phantom Menace. And Qui-Gon has the same issue where he considers taking a position on the council, and he at first is kind of like, well, I feel bad for leaving Obi-Wan, but at the same time he's like, but I don't feel like I'm a good teacher for him, so maybe this would be better. And I think a lot of Jedi probably would struggle with that, a lot of Jedi who are taking on apprentices. And I think I like it because it's a very real thing that happens in the real world with real human people teachers. And so it's nice to see that struggle kind of reflected in Star Wars. And I mean, ultimately, both Kanan and Qui-Gon figure out, actually, I am a good teacher for this job. It might not be exactly how I think it should be, but it's working. And I think that's really cool. And it's really cool to see. And I especially like in episode 5, the whole theme of, the famous quote, do or do not, there was no try. Which incidentally I'm actually looking at right now. I have a sticker of it on my laptop, which is open. But I really like, first off, how Kanan says this right at the beginning of the episode, and Ezra's like, well, what the hell does that mean, essentially? And Kanan's like, honestly, I don't know. It's just a thing I thought I should say because Yoda said it. But then throughout the episode, Kanan comes to this understanding that it actually does make sense. That if you're just trying to do something, that means you think you may or may not actually succeed, which I think is actually really cool. And it's kind of added a whole new layer to the quote for me, because, it is kind of true, right? It's all about perspective and how you're talking to yourself when you're doing things, right? So I think saying, I'm going to do this because I believe I can is better than saying, I'm going to try to do this because I'm not sure if I can. And so yeah, that's actually, like, I really like that, if you can't tell, as I'm just gushing about this new meaning that Kanan has added to this obviously very iconic quote. The other thing in episode 5 that I kind of hate is the Inquisitor, mainly because he's quite terrifying. Very scary. Not a fan. I mean, I am a fan because it's like a cool villain, bad guy, threat, whatever. But at the same time, like, I heard a rumor that potentially there may be Inquisitors in the Kenobi show, which obviously would be pretty cool. That would be pretty intriguing. But, like, I'm terrified of the Inquisitors in animation, so I don't really know how I'm going to deal with them if they're in live action. But it would be cool. It would be cool. So, again, that's another part of not season 5, episode 5 that I enjoy, is that, you know, we're getting introduced to this threat more, especially because right at the beginning of episode 1, we see Vader talking to the Inquisitor, basically saying blanket statement, collect any children that are strong with the Force and kill any Jedi that can teach them. And then we kind of go away from that. And so it's nice to have that brought back in and see kind of what was meant by that statement by Vader. So yeah, I think that was pretty good too. But yeah, that was like really the main points I wanted to touch on for these first 5 episodes here. It was probably a bit rambly, but you know what? It's the first one. I didn't really know exactly kind of where I wanted to go with this, what kind of structuring I wanted. So I thought for today, I would just kind of talk about, you know, the things that I think are important, the things that are noteworthy in the first few episodes of Rebels. But yeah, I'm super excited to be doing this because, as I've said 100 times, I think this show is really great, and I'm excited to actually pay attention this time. So yeah, there will be another a Millennium Pod episode next week. It won't be Rebels, of course, because this is going to be a bi-weekly segment, I guess. But then the following week we'll be back on the Rebels train, and my plan is for it to be episodes 6 to 10 of season 1, which is actually pretty exciting for me because I have actually not seen those ones. I'd seen most of the first 5 episodes, but I actually haven't seen those ones. So it really will be like a reaction video, but it's a reaction podcast. Yeah, so that's all the things, like I said, that I think are noteworthy of the first few episodes. And if you are still here listening to me babble on about a animated children's TV show that is pretty freaking great, thank you so much. It means a lot to know that my words are being heard by people. And as always, please feel free to reach out to me on social media. They're tagged, linked, whatever, in the description below. I would love to hear from you. Unless, of course, you're going to be mean, then I don't want to hear from you. I hope that you are having a great day, night, morning, evening, whatever it is, wherever you are. And as always, may the Force be with you.